Thank you for coming. I know a lot of you here have been involved in mid-market and central market, whatever the names we may call them from time to time for a long time. And we thank you for your continued cooperation and continued efforts in this area. The mayor last night during his State of the City address touched on some of the efforts, the stepped up efforts he wants to make here in mid-market. And we're here to elaborate on those today. And then we have a couple people from the neighborhood and from businesses who want to locate here, as well as arts groups who want to locate here, who are going to make brief remarks after the mayor spoke. So thank you again for coming.
Thanks, and again, apologize to all of you for being late, and I appreciate your patience, and I appreciate the enthusiasm in terms of the number of people that are here, and I think we all know why we're here. Anyone that has visited San Francisco, anyone that's had the privilege to live in San Francisco, or in my case, grow up in San Francisco, we recognize that the Central Market area, particularly between Holiday Plaza and UN Plaza, is not what it could be, and certainly not what it should be in the context of being a world-class city. Remember when Market Street was conceived, when it was envisioned, it was the Champs-Élysées of San Francisco. And any of you that have had the privilege of going to our sister city in Paris down the Champs-Élysées know that this is not the Champs-Élysées of San Francisco. That this, though unique stretch of San Francisco, has some remarkable attributes, but it has some challenging components as well. And that integration hasn't necessarily taken shape as so many had hoped, going back literally 30 to 40 years. In fact, I remember very specifically talking to Kevin Shelley when I was a young man, and Kevin became a member of the Board of Supervisors, and he was appointed to take a position to clean up the Tenderloin and the mid-market area by then Mayor Dianne Feinstein. It was her #1 priority to clean up the mid-market area and the Tenderloin, until there was another mayor who made it his #1 priority, and then another, and then 8 years of Brown and 6 years of me. And I recognize that that baton that was passed hasn't necessarily paid great dividends, and some of our efforts haven't necessarily taken shape as we'd hoped. As many of you know, though, in the last number of months, we've really tried to step up our efforts. I just look right outside, and you see some of those efforts, and trying to beautify the streetscape, and the work of our new police chief, George Gascon, and getting more police officer presence, the new Arts in the Storefront program that many of you participated in to take some of the old buildings and bring them back to life. We started focusing on cleaning the street with our community benefit districts and the new marketplace initiative and some of the small business loans, and a lot of those things are paying some dividends, so much so that we have reached at least an internal tipping point, not an external one, that internally we're feeling like, you know what, we can actually do something here. That we have departments that are working together that actually believe that something real can take shape here and that we can make a real impact. And that's what we're announcing today. That we are going to resubmit, dust off the old redevelopment plan, and get our redevelopment agency to focus on this area and the opportunity to capture the tax increment financing to substantively provide the resources to revitalize this area. That we're announcing a new central market partnership that includes not just the redevelopment agency, meaning we're not going to just isolate this plan exclusively in redevelopment's hand, but in partnership with Ed Reeskin and the Department of Public Works, with Luis Cancel and the work that's being done at the Arts Commission, with the Planning Department, with the Department of Building Inspection, and with our Mayor's Office of Economic and Workforce Development. We are, as I noted last night at the State of the City, going to be distributing $11.5 million in loans just to this direct area of the Central Market for small businesses. These loans are going to be distributed in the next few months. We are waiting for the final approval from HUD, Housing and Urban Development. This is a very exciting, from my perspective, program. Real liquidity, real cash into this district in a designated area to support the small business development, not least of which the business that we're standing in. We have new streetscape improvements that will complement some of the efforts that have been taking shape already in the pilot that includes shutting down a portion of Market Street to cars, a focus on pedestrians, a focus on bicyclists. All of these things will be a big part of this plan. So with that framework, we're now at a point, I think, to actually deliver on these promises. I got just 2 years left, but I don't want to be just another mayor that made big promises on mid-market and didn't deliver. I know that we can't revitalize this all in the next 24 months. I'm not naive, but we can certainly jumpstart things, and the biggest and most important thing we can do is get that tax increment financing and recalibrate and reconstitute that redevelopment plan. And our director of redevelopment is here, Fred Blackwell, who is now committing himself and his staff and his commission to do the same. And Fred is right here. Fred, you weren't going to speak, but I'm bringing you up because I'm leveraging you on this effort and leveraging your commitment. There was a lot of concern. Years ago, we had a redevelopment plan. It got stuck in politics at City Hall. And I won't get into the politics, but it's a real shame. But the politics we're committed this time will not get in the way of completing the work this time. Our new redevelopment director and his staff are now working collaboratively to make sure that's the case. And Fred, I think it'd be good to hear from you a little bit about that process and how quickly we can see that take shape.
Sure. Even though the previous redevelopment plan was ill-fated, it was the product of lots of good and we think solid community planning that had several objectives embedded in it. One was the notion of having an infill and rehabilitation program that really built on the historic cultural and commercial arts district that's here. It talked about having a very aggressive housing program that both incentivized new housing development but also preserved existing low-income housing in this area, and also talked about a lot of investments in public infrastructure such as transit stations, parks, open space, and community facilities. We think that those things that were the product of a lot of good community planning don't need to be thrown out the window, so we intend to really build on the things that were already in that plan. We, in addition to that though, the plan was certified a long time ago. It was in 2005, so there's a updating to do. We have to make new findings to satisfy state law to make sure that we can designate this as a redevelopment area, and we also have to satisfy environmental review requirements and reignite the very good community planning that went on before. So we anticipate, although moving swiftly, having a very robust, this is San Francisco after all, public input process into what this is going to look like.
So we'll take that plan, all that work that was done, and just update it and get it to the next level and not throw out all that work that's been done in the context of starting that process over from the beginning. And that's why this announcement, from my perspective, is very real, because we're going to pick up where we left off and we're going to hit the ground running. And speaking of hitting the ground running, Chief Gascon, when he took over the reins as police chief of San Francisco, like so many folks, took some tours in the Tenderloin and said, I think I can do more and do better, and initiated a new effort to try to deal with some of the obvious issues and the criminal element that was self-evident to any of us that go through the Tenderloin in a very thoughtful and judicious and I think well, considered way. And I think he's done a great job in the Tenderloin, and I think those results are self-evident. We're not going to let up on that, but we want to expand that to the mid-market area as well, and you should expect a lot more things to be happening here and a lot better things to be happening in the mid-market, but I want to have you hear from the chief directly about what that means in the next days, weeks, months, and years ahead. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And we recognize that public safety is an important component of economic development. You have to have an area where people feel safe in order for people to conduct business. And as the mayor indicated, when I first came here, I walked around the Tenderloin. In fact, I walked the Tenderloin before I was sworn in, and I saw the incredible conditions, what I consider to be unacceptable conditions. And we have committed ourselves to the Tenderloin, as well as we have for many other parts of the city, for the long haul. As a matter of fact, just earlier, as I was standing here, we had people come over and say, you know, the Tenderloin is very different. It's not perfect. It still has a lot of work that needs to be done. but it's the best that we have seen in about 30 years. The same commitment is moving over to this area. We have men and women that have been dedicated to this area. We have Lieutenant Joe Garrity and his people. Crime in this area today, as compared to the same time last year, is already 30% down, and that commitment is one that we will continue to work in order to enhance the quality of life and allow the economic development to take place.
Appreciate that, Chief. This is not about gentrification. This is about integrating what makes this city special and right. And one of the big parts about this area that I think is special is the arts and cultural amenities, and preserving them, enhancing them, and building on them. And Luis, you want to speak just briefly about some of the work you've been doing and the good work on the arts and storefronts briefly, and some of the ideas you have integrating your staff and perspective in helping this partnership.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Over the past 12 months, this area has actually seen some incremental improvements. And you've got long-standing for-profit and non-profit theater companies here, like Exit Theater and the Warfield Theater and the Golden Gate, that have survived the ups and downs. And then you've had some folks who've really helped to take the initiative and convert, for instance, as an example, a former porn theater and turn it into a new visual arts center, the Gray Area Foundation for the Arts. That's all happened within the last 12 months. We've had vacant storefronts filled by San Francisco artists. That's the Art in Storefronts program that the mayor asked us to pull together. And so what you're seeing here today is really the culmination and stepping it to the next level of the improvements that the mayor has for for this place, and it's the vision for the future of Market Street in San Francisco. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And Rich Hillis, who's taking the lead in our Economic Development Office. Rich, do you want to sort of flesh out, again, very briefly, some of the key components of this new partnership, and then introduce some of our small business speakers as well?
In kind of touching on what the mayor said, this obviously is working with the community that's here, and the many folks who've come to us who've said they wanted to locate here. It's building on the historic buildings that are here and making sure their tools are available for owners to renovate those buildings, for arts groups to enter into leases into those buildings. So there are a lot of people here, some who've been in mid-market for 30 years, others who've been here for a couple months. And I'd just like to recognize some of them and ask a couple to come up and speak. John Clark from Show Dogs is here, who started this restaurant a couple months ago, and he's looking to start another restaurant across the street shortly. Let me just go through a couple of people. Josette Melcher from the Gray Area Foundation is here, as Luis Cancel mentioned. The Dugan family, who represent Original Joe's and want to restart that business, they're here. Daryl Smith from the luggage store, a long-standing tenant in Central Market, here. Richard Livingston from the Exit Theater, and they've recently completed a renovation. David Addington, who owns the Warfield building, who's got great plans to enhance that building. David Rhodes from Urban Realty, who's sponsoring the City Place project, a major new retail project between 5th and 6th that should do a lot to energize that block. We've helped establish community benefit districts, which other cities call business improvement districts. So Elaine Zamora from the North of Market Tenderloin CBD and Steve Barton from the Central Market CBD are here. They've helped beautify the neighborhood, providing cleaning and streetscape beautification programs, as well as a safety ambassador program that's been cutting edge in Central Market. So I'll ask John Clark first from Show Dogs to come up and talk about his new endeavors here.
We showed up, my partners and I showed up to talk to Dave Addington about a year and a half ago, discussing plans for a project in the Warfield building. We looked out the window and we saw this great, really beautiful little site, and we felt that this was a great opportunity to do something immediately. Show Dogs opened about 6 or 7 months ago.
This is an internal mic. So
this is an internal mic.
To emote.
I'll stand up there. We opened Show Dog about 7 months ago, and it's turned out to be a really great opportunity for the neighborhood, for our potential site across the street at the Warfield building. And being a longtime resident of San Francisco, this is one of my favorite intersections. And when I met Dave a year and a half ago, I came down and I thought this is a really exciting place. The two theaters, the crossing of 6th to Taylor to Golden Gate, there's a great flow here. There's a lot of spectacular architecture, and it just is part of the city that, from foreign cinema's perspective, our perspective, was just spectacular. Had a lot of opportunity, and we're looking forward to opening our site across the street at the Warfield. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. We all look forward to going.
John and Marie Dugan are here from Original Joe's to kind of talk about their plans for restarting the restaurant that they've had for many years.
Can I talk from here? Sure.
Yes. This is what happens when you are a landmark in the city. You got to speak in the mic.
He's tall enough to talk.
Nico's trying to create problems.
Anyway, I'll talk loud. My name is John Dugan. My mom, Marie, is here. My grandfather opened Original Joe's in 1937, so we've been in the neighborhood over 70 years. My mom also spent her childhood on Leavenworth and Jones, so we have a long history in this city of working and living in this neighborhood. It's great to see everyone here, the mayor, the police chief, and everyone else here. For a long time, we thought we were the lone dog in the hunt. For about 25 years, our customers risked their lives to eat our cheeseburgers, which says a lot about our cheeseburger and says a lot about our customer base, which I think is the most loyal in San Francisco. I'm very excited about what's happening in the neighborhood. I think the incentives, the development money go a long way, but it's not the only thing. You could have the most beautiful restaurant in the world. If you don't have a multitude of businesses working together, if you don't have private money feeling confident to invest their money in the neighborhood, you have to have that synergy. Besides that, you need the concierge feeling confident to send those tourist dollars down south the 200 block of Taylor. They feel confident coming west on the 100 block of Eddy. When all those things come together, the good thing is this thing can turn around so quick. The potential is great, and it can happen fast. And that's why we're excited, and that's why we're motivated to stay here on Taylor Street. Original Joe's is like a part of our family. It's the fabric of the city. It's part of the fabric of the city, and we're going to do everything we can to get it back going. I do want to say one thing. I think the neighborhood itself right now is a lot better than it was 2 years ago. I see the changes every day. I thank everyone here for doing that, because it gives me a lot of hope and gives me a lot of confidence. I think what we're doing on Turk and Taylor, what David Addington's doing at the Warfield, Farmer Brown on Turk and Mason, all those are encouraging signs. And I think for the first time in a long time, my family feels like we have a voice to City Hall, and we just want to say thank you to Amy Cohen, Michael Cohen, Elvin Padilla. All those people have been a great help and inspired us to believe in this neighborhood and do everything we can to reopen. So, thank you guys.
And next is Josette Melcher from the Gray Area Foundation, and they've started a great venue on Taylor. They've invested in Central Market, and we want to build on that arts component, so she'll talk about that.
So once again, my name is Josette Melcher. I'm the Executive Director of Gray Area Foundation for the Arts. Gray Area was founded to create San Francisco's first cultural center dedicated to art and technology. We're a nonprofit group that seeks to actively remove labels and combine methods and genres. We provide tools and space for artists to create. We're building an international network for collaborative creation and exchange. We facilitate knowledge and resource sharing. North of Market Neighborhood Improvement Corporation invited Gray Area 3 years ago to tour facilities in the Tenderloin. We met Jack Sumsky, the owner of our building, and he provided the financing for our first half of our center. I'd like to today acknowledge Jack Sumsky and Davis Realty for providing financing. Without this, our center would not be possible. I'd also like to acknowledge the city for their willingness to create an arts district in the heart of downtown San Francisco. We've partnered with Recombinant Media Labs to complete the next phase of our center, which will include a media lab, performance venue, cafe, and retail. I'd like to urge more arts groups and property owners to come together and work creatively to build on this movement. We have a lot of ideas and enthusiasm, but we can't do this without the continued support of the city and everyone here. We're just around the corner, so of course I invite you all to come down. We're at 55 Taylor, and we're going to be expanding to the end of the block, the Turk and Taylor, this year. Thank you.
And finally, Joe Good from Joe Good Dance Company, a great organization. They're looking for space in mid-market, and again, I mean, hopefully there's a lot of property owners here. Maybe we can get a lease signed actually today. But
hi, I'm Joe Good for the Joe Good Performance Group, and we have been in San Francisco since 1986 making contemporary art, and I want to applaud the wisdom of the mayor for knowing that artists are going to bring energy and community to this very important area. It's the heart of San Francisco. It's the theater district. It's where everyone wants to be, and I feel like I'm a representative of many arts groups who will want to be in this area, want to be part of that transition to something really exciting and totally possible in San Francisco, the greatest arts town perhaps in the USA.
Well done.
So, thank you.
I mean, a lot of people describe this area, especially at night, as you know, kind of seedy and a place that people don't want to walk. So how does that change? I mean,
I think you heard from a number of people that things have gotten better here in the last 2 years, and I think objectively they have. And I think one of the most important things we can do, and I'm just looking at 6th Street, and I can assure you, if you saw before and after photos, you can't, sometimes you don't even notice these things, like we are turning up the heat, but you're still in the boiling water, so you don't necessarily notice the difference. It's dramatically different, but there's still a lot of challenges that are now being addressed by more police presence, by officers in uniform walking the beat, by the work that the chief has done in the Tenderloin, and that now will be coming down into this mid-market area that I think will give people a greater sense of confidence and security. But the most important thing we can do is activate spaces, like we've activated this space. And that's why stimulating the economic development in the area becomes essential, and that's what that $11.5 million of loans hopefully will be doing, and that's what our participation in taking vacant spaces and converting them to artistic and cultural spaces is also doing. It's beginning to activate the space. And for all the controversy around the mid-market closure in the street, we've actually also created a lot more identity in the area, and in a consequence, perversely, have been marketing its very existence and some of these programs. And I think by nature of the number of you that are here today, I think you recognize the city's willingness to try new things and not accept the status quo. Some things will work, some things won't, but we're not willing any longer to accept the status quo and argue for mediocrity in mid-market.
Roughly, how long does this take to sort of, you know, make nice?
I mean, you can't. I mean, it's really, it's inside all of them. It's how quick that we get new foreign cinema in there, and how quickly we get that small business loan and they open up their space, and how quickly we get that lease signed for Joe Good. Well, look, I got 2 years left. So far as I'm concerned, I got a countdown clock, and I want to see something substantively happen down here. And I think in the last 24 months, we started with a very low bar. We have seen substantive changes, but now I think we've built a foundation where you really are going to see much more dramatic change in a much shorter period of time. But let me not overpromise. I'll be cautious of that. But the most important thing we can do is capture this tax increment financing and get that redevelopment plan back on track, and then start drawing down these historic tax credits, new market tax credits, and that's what these partnerships are with my mayor's office of economic development and others, and I think you're going to start really seeing big changes.
One of the problems in this area, Mr. Mayor, despite all the great changes, is the problem of human defecation and urination, sanitation issue. Is there anything to be done about that?
Yes. Ed Rieskin, my director of the Department of Public Works, is here, and Ed is responsible for the cleanliness of our streets. And why are you not walking up to the mic? And he's intimately familiar with those concerns and can speak to them.
I am. So one of the things that we've been doing under the mayor's direction is really focusing the resources where the needs are. The needs are certainly great here. So we've been doing much more intensified cleaning of the sidewalks and the streets than we do in other parts of town. We have our steam cleaners hitting hot spots in some places 3 times a day. Both of the community benefit districts that Rich referenced, they have their own cleaning crews that are out here as well. But perhaps most importantly, we work in partnership with the homeless outreach teams and with the police department, and the addition of this Market Street beat has really been helpful to try to keep people moving so that we can clean the areas. It's a significant challenge, and there's no question that what's really going to change this is the kind of economic development, the work that the mayor has enabled to get homeless folks off of the street and into places such that they don't have to use the streets to take care of that kind of personal business. So we're working at it from a lot of different angles, and I think, as a lot of folks have said, although it's not where it needs to be, it's certainly a lot better than it was 2 years ago, and we're continuing on that path. I think this reinvigoration will help further to get us to where the Tenderloin needs to be.
But these community benefit districts have been the big change, and these public-private partnerships we're developing, the Central City partnerships, the folks you see right in fact behind you in front of me that are out here sweeping more consistently, and the steam cleaning becomes essential to address the issue that you just referenced. More of it.
You see gentrification in the area, but how do you do that and at the same time attract people who have money to spend, because ultimately these businesses, in order to survive, have to have people coming in here, middle class, who have disposable income to spend?
When redevelopment is done right, and it is not always done right, it's the purpose of that tax increment financing to help subsidize those market rate costs that it would otherwise gentrify a neighborhood. And so that's the purpose of capturing that tax increment, to provide a framework to democratize that opportunity for people to enter into these spaces that otherwise could not afford it. Fundamentally, that's a way of approaching it. To look at your zoning in a way where you have to zone in with inclusionary requirements, affordability requirements, a diversity of people based upon their economic position. The artistic and cultural expression certainly derives in and of itself a certain kind of energy that is consistent, my perspective, maintaining San Francisco's unique status as a diversified city, and those are the things that we need to do. You just can't just open this up to the highest bidder, start tearing things down, redevelop it as a giant strip mall, and that's not the direction of this effort.
So thank you. You said that politics wasn't going to get in the way this time.
Yeah, that's called optimism, but not blind optimism.
I was going to ask you, how so? What's new?
Well, well, I don't know. Term limits? Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. And we will stick around too, happy to answer any questions.
Where'd you want to go? This is the pickled hot link with light blue cheese. It's pretty basic.
And thank you for Show Dogs for hosting us.